Welcome to today's Digital Lounge. I'm Mark, and in this short episode, we're exploring what it really takes to design a digital transformation program that doesn't just launch but lasts. In his latest blog, Scaling Success: How to Design Digital Transformation Programs That Last, Dave Thomas, Program Director at Crimson, explained why governance, stakeholder engagement, and a people first approach are the cornerstones of sustainable change. But beyond the framework, what does it take to keep momentum alive, to move from pilots to enterprise wide adoption, and to build transformation into the DNA of an organization? That's exactly what we'll be unpacking today. And so, with that, Dave, many thanks and welcome to today's Digital Lounge. I believe it's the first time you've been on the show, so welcome aboard.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for having me.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the blog that you recently published. We've had a couple of comments from readers of that, and I was hoping that we might be able to dig into a couple of areas around that. In the blog, you say governance is the backbone of transformation. I was wondering whether you'd be able to share a real life example where strong governance either rescued a struggling program or prevented failure from the start.
Yeah, I think the one that probably instantly jumps to mind, Mark, is a failing customer transformation. So it's one where we helped ultimately the customer on their journey at the start. They then decided to take that responsibility in house. Unfortunately, over time, due to sort of failure to apply best practice and standards, that platform, which was the prime platform of the customer, started appearing on main board reports. So it's at that point that we engaged with the customer, and their senior exec team decided that they would take it upon themselves to meet on a weekly basis to ultimately sort of regain control of that program and bring the much needed direction and focus they required. And we worked with them ultimately to get the program back on track to the point that the business could start trusting that platform again. I think it would have been relatively easy at the time for the customer to delegate that responsibility to sort of more junior colleagues, but I think the real true ownership from that team, the dedication, focus, and the desire to succeed really is what turned that program around.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you've both Crimson and yourself. You've been at Crimson for a long time now, Dave. I think a lot longer than I have even, and I've been knocking around for a good 12, 13 years. So we've collectively seen a lot of projects, programs of work over that time. So you've got a wealth of experience to draw from, and I think something that we've seen often is that many organisations underestimate the internal effort required to scale transformation. So, in your view, what are those big early warning signs that a team is overstretched, and how should leaders respond before burnout sets in?
Great question. I think we spend a lot of time with customers at the start of projects, really helping mobilize that project successfully. And that's things like looking at roles and responsibilities and ultimately the potential capacity for those roles and responsibilities over time to ultimately drive a successful outcome. That can, from a customer, involve seconding people away from day jobs or taking part of their time, and ultimately is a costly activity. We do see, time after time, organisations unfortunately have to compromise on this, and that can be one of those sort of early sort of bits of insight into potential future issues downstream. As we then get into delivery, if we start seeing sort of missed or slipping milestones, if we start seeing low quality deliverables, then they're all real signs, I think, that the team ultimately is stretched and there needs to be some sort of reset. I think from the get-go, if we can look at responsible planning, and ultimately it's not always possible, but if we're building in sort of contingency, then that might be fire breaks or sort of spare sprints to avoid burnout, to allow the team to catch up. What I touched upon, regular or roles and responsibilities at the start. We also recommend, knowing that transformation and true transformation programs are long-lasting programs, that there's that periodic review of roles and responsibilities, because ultimately over time people change, the pull or the need for that individual changes. So actually moving roles and responsibilities around can be healthy. Really trying to reduce or remove single points of failure is essential, because ultimately, if your program is really sitting on one or two key people, then it only takes them to win the lottery. We often refer to them as single points of success rather than single points of failure. But and ultimately, the program's up against it. And last but not least, I think it's trying to celebrate those small milestones. I was with a customer yesterday, and it's really easy when you're in a program to always think about what you've got coming forwards and not really take the time to reflect what you've achieved today. And I think yesterday, spending a team day with them was really good to see some of the stats of what they've actually achieved, and that sort of motivates you to go again.
Yeah, it's always exciting to celebrate success with customers at that, at those key milestones. And you talked about the importance of roles and responsibilities. Well, leadership is definitely up there, and you've highlighted that leadership can really make or break success. In your view, what separates a truly engaged executive sponsor from someone who's only there in name? I mean, perhaps you could share a couple of examples of that.
Yeah, I think we've got to be realistic that exec sponsors, exec people in general are very, very busy people. So the program realistically is only one of a multitude of activities that they need to concentrate on each week. But I think in my experience, the best exec sponsors are the really visible ones. I think there's some companies where the exec sponsor comes in at the kickoff, they say a few words, and they sort of disappear a little bit into the background. Whereas I think the ones that I've seen that to be really successful are the ones that really champion that transformation. I think at regular intervals throughout the program. I think when it gets difficult, as often long-term programs do, I think they're the ones that don't shy away from that. I think within program boards, they're the ones that are challenging and asking the difficult questions, but also showing an empathy and support for the wider team. Little examples there. Active participation at program board. I think regular comms to users in terms of what's coming and how it will impact them. I think going back to basics, it's good, strong, clear direction when it's needed most. I think ultimately transformation can be quite disconcerting for organisations, and it's the exec sponsor and the exec team that set the tone. I think teams that work beneath them basically take confidence from that good leadership, and I think that then positively impacts the change in adoption, and hopefully ultimately helps drive the desired outcomes.
Yeah, and I suppose with leadership as well, they set the tone of that culture. And I wanted to come on to that actually, because what's the saying? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So beyond frameworks and tools, culture often decides whether that transformation sticks, of course. So, in your view, what practical steps can leaders take to build that culture that embraces continuous change over the long term? Because as you've sort of alluded to there, this is an ongoing process, and there's the stamina that's needed for that. So, could you share some
Yeah,
sort of some views on culture?
yeah, very much so. I think it starts with a clear strategy. So really knowing what you're setting out to achieve. I think as you said and I've alluded to before, your programs are or transformation programs are long lasting. Therefore, it's really important to have consistent behaviour. I think you shouldn't be sort of ebbing and flowing between sort of being slightly erratic to sort of dynamic or otherwise. I think that consistency breeds confidence. I think, as I've said before in the previous question, that real heavy engagement, but equally trying to take time to make that change relatable to individuals and meaningful. So quite often, if we use sort of experience or storytelling to advise individuals, what's coming, what's in it for them, and how it might impact them, then quite often you'll get them sort of on board, quicker and hopefully longer lasting. I think in this day and age, I think leaders that can embrace and be open to new ideas. I think to generate a culture that is not fearful of failure, because I think growth is about not only success but learning quickly from failure as well. And I think if they can create a true safe place where individuals within the organization can not only challenge but sort of feedback where things might not be going well, then ultimately I think they're on the right path from a cultural perspective. A company way back, I think when I first started, I think their big mantra was change is inevitable. And I think if you could really try and embrace that change, if you can then build that into your frameworks in terms of rewarding adaptability, I think embracing a learning culture within the organization, and ultimately, I think celebrating innovation. I think if you can get the right balance between those three things, then you're probably going to be on the right track.
Fantastic, Dave. I know it's your first time on the show, and we're really grateful for your time. I know how busy you are, and I know we're fast running out of time. But I'd love to ask one more question, if I may, while we've got you, and that's what one common myth about digital transformation would you like to debunk once and for all? You've got the platform, so go for it.
I think sometimes there's too much emphasis on the tech. I think at Crimson, we talk about our four pillars. So we talk about people, process, technology, data, and AI. And I think it's really essential that all these components are reviewed, they're managed, and they're defined not only in terms of what the current state is, but what the desired future state is. I think the old thing is you can build the most technically best solution in the world, but with poor data and process and not engaging the right people, then ultimately that transformation is doomed to fail.
Dave, thank you so much for your time today. Hopefully, we'll have you back again in the near future. If you're interested in reading Dave's blog, Scaling Success: How to Design a Digital Transformation Program That Lasts, you can find that on Crimson's blog. Find us at crimson.co.uk, and you'll be able to find the blog from there. In the meantime, we wish you a good day, and we'll all catch up with you very soon on the Digital Lounge. Thanks for viewing.